listen up. You can be anything in the world and God.
And we're back to do the fourth installment of my language series. And to all my linguists, educators, and just lovers of language, we're about to take it into the classroom. So the book that we'll be discussing today is called Understanding English Language Variation in U.S. Schools by Dr. Ann H. Charity Hudley and Christine Mallinson. And here are a few reasons why I chose this book. 1. I'm really curious as to how educators handle spoken and written English dialects such as African American English in a classroom setting. 2. I want to learn more about the prestige linked to standard English and the limitations linked towards non-standard English. And 3, I want to know what is being done to foster inclusion and diversity in U.S. schools with regards to pedagogy and curricula. And so this research is divided into 5 chapters, first looking at what exactly is standard English, also looking at English language variation, and looking at how we can assess students who speak mainly English language variations such as English dialect into the classroom. So y'all gotta understand, this book right here was an answered prayer from above. Okay, so let's talk a bit about what the book defines as standard English. What exactly is it and how did it become so prestigious? According to this book, standard English is English that is predominantly used for business, academic purposes, and other formal and professional settings. Yeah, I can see that working out. But over time, politicians and educators basically joined forces to implement rules, curricula, and assessments to make standard English a wider language of communication. Now, on the other hand, you have non-standard English, which is basically English dialects comprised of an ever-growing lexicon, its own grammatical rules, semantics, syntax that come from communication of ethnic groups from all around the world. Yeah, that checks out too, because language, at the end of the day, is cultivated through shared experiences. However, if standard English has its space in the professional realm, what space do we have for non-standard English? Is it the classroom? And since we're on this topic, let me address a few dangers of the unconscious bias towards standard English. First, measuring one's English dialect by the grammatical rules and functionality of standard English reinforces the idea that standardization represents correction in all areas of communication, consequently leaving speakers of these dialects to feel that their communication is incorrect. Secondly, it implies that standard English is much richer than non-standard English, which, if you really dig deep, it's the opposite. Yes, my vernacular is all up in your movies, your clothes, your children's mouths. Yes, trust me, it's rich. Now, after reading this book, it taught me that in order to foster inclusion by way of incorporating English dialect into one's teaching, I realized that other factors have to be taken into consideration. For example, you as an educator have to raise your awareness on what language your students are producing, both spoken and written, in order to know if that language is mirroring their own vernacular or not. Also, you have to make a clear distinction about what kind of grammar mistakes they're making. Oftentimes, it can be just a matter of them not choosing to code switch into standard English. And in that case, it might be beneficial to teach code switching strategies to your students. Another takeaway is that your students need to know exactly what standard English is and how it came to be. So we covered a bit about what standard English is, but what about assessing students? Now, we all know that assessments are done for quite a few reasons, but what I'll mainly address is what privileged kids bring to the table with regards to test-taking strategies versus underprivileged kids. Oh, and by the way, we can assume that there are other factors that go into test-taking results, such as school funding, school resources, learner autonomy, parent involvement, things like that. Now, according to this book, one of the dangerous assumptions in testing students is assuming that all the test takers come from one specific culture. So some students may bring more cultural knowledge to the table than others with regards to test taking. But is that their fault if they don't know exactly what culture they're being tested on? So in other words, how do you think a brother like me is going to perform on essay questions about sailing? I may be a great writer, but I don't know anything about sailing. But I do know about rowing. Why? It's because I was on the rowing team in university. Now, with that being said, I understand that my experience cannot be assumed to be a part of the African American culture. So with regards to inclusion, educators need to be mindful of the cultural background and previous knowledge that students are bringing to their tests. Presently, I'm not sure if there's a mainstream multilingual framework that has been kid tested, mother approved, but I'm sure that this book is contributing to that framework. At the end of the day, there's still so much that educators can learn and implement so that their learners who come from various multicultural and multilingual backgrounds have what they need to progress in and around the U.S. This has been the Black Curriculum.
Before we came to this country, we were kings and queens, never porch monkeys. There was empires in Africa called Kush, Timbuktu, where every race came to get books to learn from.